This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill.
I'm so much more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. Today we have a special guest, Garrett Waller from True South House Buyers. Welcome, Garrett. Please tell us a little bit about your real estate background.
Yeah, so I am Garrett Waller. I originally started out as an acquisitions manager for a fledgling wholesaling outfit in downtown Baltimore City, working in kind of some dodgy neighborhoods, doing phone sales basically, buying people's houses over the phone for a gentleman who was a landlord, but was really trying to get into the wholesaling game. So I had done an internship doing outbound text blast marketing, and I kind of brought that to him and kind of became, no, I wouldn't say an overnight success, a 4.5 months success. And we really started to dominate that Baltimore market. Fast forward 2.5 years later, his rental portfolio had grown from 40 houses to 120 houses, and we were averaging about $60,000 in wholesale fees per month. Once we kind of hit some of those benchmarks, I decided that, I think I could probably go out, do this on my own. I did. I failed hard. And I went to go work for someone else for a little while. That experience opened my eyes to how not to run a real estate company, and kind of gave me a little bit of a pat on the back that, hey, maybe you can really do this. And then I started working for myself again shortly thereafter, and it's been a smashing success ever since.
Excellent. And we all learn the hard way. I know that I did, starting off on my own and really figuring things out. And it came down to basically just perseverance. Do you give up or do you keep going? And I just was not going to fail. And I think that you're creating that same pattern. You mentioned you started working with a property owner where you were focusing on dodgy neighborhoods. That's an interesting one. I haven't heard dodgy neighborhoods yet. And you were the direct to seller. That was your position as the acquisitions manager. Spent a lot of time on the phone.
Yeah, so it started off with us really going. We would text the person. We would, if they indicated that they wanted to sell it in the near future, we would set an appointment and go out there. And yeah, I really got to know the city of Baltimore in some areas that, I probably wouldn't want to live in, but, it was a start. It was, I got my shot there, and yeah, I wouldn't change it, but I also probably wouldn't go back.
Right. So you're going into neighborhoods where you should be packing a gun, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I remember one time I decided to go and do an appointment. This was in, January at about 5:45 p.m. And in Baltimore, that is definitely after dark at that time of year. And I pulled up. I was sitting there for about 5 minutes. Guy says he's 15 minutes late. So I'm looking in my rear view. 3 guys with bandanas and crowbars are running at my car. I put it in drive, stepped on it, and decided I'm probably never going to come back here when it's not.
That's hysterical. My first building that I ever purchased, 21 years old, and I was just motivated after reading that first book, made a very, very low ball offer on a house in a dodgy neighborhood, and it was accepted. I thought I had to bid on 20, 30, 40 houses doing it with the low ball technique. So it should have been a red flag when that first one was accepted. And we buy that house, and I'm pulling up there to do work on a daily basis, basically to people with the head nod. when I pull up, I'm 21 years old. They think I'm pulling up to buy drugs from them, right in front of my house. That was my learning curve. At that point, I realized that I did not want to invest in dodgy neighborhoods.
Yes.
And I know you mentioned you learned a lot from that first person and the second person. What are the top 3 things you learned based on how not to set up your business, those failing aspects of those first 2 positions you had, leading up to the success you've had with true South House buyers?
So I would say the failures I've had, I would say at the time when I was working for someone who, I would say didn't really have a good grasp on how to run a business. I think number one, you need to lead by example. If you're not putting in the work and you're not putting in the time and you don't have systems in place that can substitute for your absence, it's really hard to expect your employees to succeed. It's an unfair thing for them to handle unless they're coming from a place of years of experience. You can't bring on someone new and expect them to thrive without guidance. Second, I would say definitely know your numbers. I would say when I made it, I was doing this up in Connecticut with this company, and Baltimore and Connecticut are totally different markets, totally different underwriting as far as expenses and closing costs and repairs. Labor is a bit more expensive up there. That was not clearly communicated to me. So I think you really need to teach your acquisitions people a really clear-cut buy box and the parameters for making an offer on properties before you throw them in the fire. Because without having that knowledge, salespeople are their instinct is just gonna be to try to get it for the lowest as possible, and a lot of the times you won't convert that deal and the contract will fall out because it doesn't really meet your parameters.
Getting it for as low as possible doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good deal.
It doesn't even come close to meaning that. If the lowest they'll take is 100 and what you should be paying is 20,000, well, great job, you got them down to 100,000. You had 80,000 more to go. And I think the third thing I learned from failing was work with, especially if you're going out on your own, I would say try to find people to work with that have complementary skill sets to your own. If you're good at acquisitions and marketing, find someone who's really good at systems management and transaction coordination and bookkeeping and maybe more detail oriented. I think that when I went into business for the first time, my partner, great guy, talented guy, but we both were good at the same things, like the same things. And, obviously you're going to have tasks that you don't like to do. And if your business partners, most hated tasks are the same as your own, well, those tasks sometimes are going to get swept under the rug. So work with people who can make up for your shortcomings, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great point. We all find that out too. That's a huge highlight when we're building these teams. It's all about turning a team of 3 doing the work of 5.
Right.
Where if you have that team of 3 all with the same skill set, you might be doing the work of 1, maybe 2.
Yeah.
But getting back to that first employer you had, you went from 40 houses to 120 houses. It sounds like he was doing some things right. And
oh no, my first employer was great. He really just taught me the game. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that.
So what did you learn from the first guy that really set you up from where you are now?
I think what I learned, I think it was really two main things. Number one, it was hustle. I think he taught me that especially when you're starting out or don't have a big team, you have to work very hard, and you need to stay on top of the people who are potentially interested in selling their house. You have to be diligent with your follow up, because if you're not, they say, "Oh, I'm not ready to sell it in February, but I'll be ready in April." And XYZ real estate company messages them in March and something has changed, then you're not going to get the deal. You have to stay on top of people. You have to hustle. You have to make sure that your bases are covered. Um, and I think the second thing that I don't know if he taught me, but he showed me the value of, was experience. And there's no substitute for it. He had been doing this he was in mortgages for 10 years. And by the time I was working for him, he had been doing, his own real estate portfolio full time for about a year. And, his just experience and knowledge just working in the industry for so long, having someone in your corner that has that, whether it's a private money lender or a real estate agent or a title company representative, someone that you can go to when there's nothing on Bigger Pockets or the internet that can answer the question. Having someone with that, I don't want to call it street knowledge, but with that experiential learned knowledge is really invaluable. And he definitely had that.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of with that is someone that can handle any situation. When you get to a certain level of experience, I think it comes down to having that confidence where even though it might not be right in the wheelhouse, it's the experienced guy with confidence and he knows it's time to step up and handle that situation. What type of area do you think you're in now that you're the owner of True South House Buyers? Are you experienced to the point where you're able to handle those situations and be the mentor to your employees?
Yeah, I would say, it'd be foolish of me to say that I'm perfect or know everything. We've, really, our business really succeeded due to, the pressure of failure. There was certain aspects of our business that weren't performing. Our wholesaling branch, we weren't making enough money to that I was expecting we would have made to keep operations going. So we had to pivot. We had to begin flipping these houses so that we could make more money off of them. So really, just by necessity, we had to learn how to flip houses remotely, and it was not easy. There was lots of failures, and putting in new sheetrock before you do the electrical work, just stupid mistakes that we made that have taught us lots of lessons. But at this point, I'm pretty darn confident in our business, and as long as the market holds, I'm pretty sure we're going to have a viable product forever.
Awesome. No, there's certainly money to be made in real estate in any market. That is for sure. It's just knowing your business and buying correctly and knowing the operations. I love that putting in the sheetrock before the electrical. It makes me smile a bit in my early days when we were doing similar things. When you don't have much money, you just bought this house, and you have a small budget that you just kind of made up on your own without having any massive experience. And, you get somebody into that apartment and then their tub doesn't drain because you have clogged pipes after you just did the entire rehab, and now it's not even a functional apartment. So when you mentioned you had to solve cash flow issues when you're wholesaling and you need to keep the ball rolling here on a weekly, monthly basis, what is your business model? Was it buying and holding, build that portfolio, or are you a mix at this point where you have a flipping division, a portfolio division? What does that look like?
So our business right now is pretty much, I would say 80% flips, 20% wholesale. We want to get into so we've really built out our construction team to the point where we can handle about 6 projects at once. Currently, we're only doing 4 at the moment. So we really want to start, filling those vacant gaps with some more rental type deals that might not make sense as a flip, but if we were to hold them, would definitely cash flow. But right now we're really primarily focused on flipping in the beginning, cash is king. We're trying to build up a reserve, build up liquidity so that we can reinvest in marketing, reinvest in the acquisition of more deals. So right now we're really heavily focused on flipping because it's the biggest bang for your buck in the moment per deal.
Let's dive back into that maintenance. I was a maintenance guy for a long time, construction manager a long time, getting those flips done, getting those rehabs done so we could get them filled, put that property in the portfolio so we could move on. I know that you started off with limited experience and learned the hard way with a lot of that maintenance and remodel stuff. What did you figure out you really needed to create that maintenance staff so you're operating seamlessly now? Because you just mentioned you're doing 6 at one time. That's pretty good volume.
Yeah. So the most important thing for me to become good at that aspect of the business was to remove myself entirely from doing it because I'm so I found someone on the ground who is, manages our jobs. She is she's organized. She's not expensive. And the way that I met her was through networking. Someone who was in the multifamily space was doing a project in Alabama, and she didn't have any work with them anymore. And she's like, I'm looking for a long-term, partnership here. And I'm like, well, we got volume. And I know that, you work for someone I trust and you do a great job. So, we worked out a deal with them. So there's a lot of value in networking with people who have operators on the ground. I would say that's probably the quickest way to find someone, especially if you're doing flipping remotely. You can always go in, if you're doing it locally, to Home Depot, go there at 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, find guys there, hire 5 guys right there, put them in, and fire 3 of them at the end of the day to find the guys that really want to work. But that's a little bit more hands-on, and all of our flips right now are in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I live in Manhattan, New York. So can't really be going to Home Depot at 6 a.m. in Chattanooga very often.
Oh, wow. So you're doing this remotely. You're in Manhattan doing flips in Chattanooga. So, that maintenance coordinator is a key component. So what is your expertise? What are you doing from Manhattan to make this business run?
Well, I think I have seen firsthand, I will say the one gentleman who I believe didn't really run a great real estate business. He was pretty good at marketing, and my first boss, who was a really good at managing a real estate company, he also was very good at marketing. So I'm very fortunate to have worked for 2 people who were pretty good at marketing, and I picked up some of their actions and have copycatted a lot of it, and it's worked. So that's the number one thing. I would say, without leads, you'll never convert. So you need to generate good off-market leads. And second, very close second, you must have a sales process if you're doing it remotely. You can't wing it. You have to have have a conversation with these folks over the phone, but you have to have path, a path to acquisitions that you follow every time. And that is what will allow you to get consistent results. And also being friendly. I can't underscore that enough. You have to be friendly and develop rapport with these folks so that they trust you, because they don't know what your face looks like. But those two things are just the most important when it comes to doing this remotely.
Yeah, I like that rip off and duplicate technique. Yeah, anything that you learn from in the past, I don't care if it's a partner, if it's from a former boss, if they are doing something correctly. Yeah, success leaves clues. You mentioned three things in there, and we'll dive into these next three things individually. Is you met your maintenance leader at this point, or your maintenance coordinator, networking, you mentioned marketing and the sales process. Where did you meet that person that's running your maintenance, or what type of a networking event when she's in Tennessee and you're in New York?
Well, I met her old boss. Her old boss is my roommate, and I met him when I moved in. So it was very, very fortunate of us, to be in kind of complementary businesses, and it just happened that way. But that I would say don't go on Craigslist looking for a new place to rent in the hopes that you can find a networking connection. There are much better ways to network that I do, that have been very fruitful for dispositions, transaction coordination. I would say that, especially in the single family space, Facebook groups are very good. I would say there are some digital masterminds that happen weekly that I'm going to very frequently. And you can meet some really, really good folks. I've met private money lenders in there. I actually have met my current private money lender from a Facebook comment in one of those, because I posted one of my flips and I said, who wants to fund another one like this? And he said me. And I talked to him. He actually had the best rate I'd ever gotten. And it just works like that. You have to put yourself out there in spaces where people in your industry will see you.
No doubt. And that's a huge part of your business, is that money lender. That just caught my ear. Mm-hmm. And, talk about, from the beginning of you starting your own thing with True South House mm-hmm. till now, because, what happens to real estate investors a lot of the time, even being successful, you run out of money.
Right.
What is that journey been since you started being able to fund your deals till now? Is it just the one private lender, or do you have a portfolio of lenders? What does that look like?
Yeah. So when it comes to funding deals, I have three lenders that I use. One of them I use for bridge loans. If I'm just needing to buy a property for a couple months, I'm going to just resell it as is. And then I have two that I use for fix and flip loans. I've been giving one of my lenders the cold shoulder as of late to try to incentivize them to lower their prices, and it's working. They sent me a holiday basket, even though I hadn't done a deal with them in a while. But when it came to restarting my business and getting the marketing off the ground, I actually partnered up with someone who was sort of a financial partner who was really interested in learning about how to run a real estate business. So I found someone with a lot of liquidity to finance our marketing and overhead and let me kind of run the business. And it's been very successful that way.
All right, cool. Now we're tying in here very nicely with that complementary skill set. So I'm starting to put your business together, and you're finding acquisitions, and you have a partner now that's able to handle some of that financing aspect of it. Find a deal, you need money for the deal. That's a great start. So what is your partnership team look like, that complementary skill set team look like? Who else is on that team that's making this happen?
So yeah, I would say, we don't really have any other W-2 or 10, well, we do have some 1099s, but my business partner, he brought the money and he brought a lot of enthusiasm, but he didn't have much experience. He's, great on the phone. So he's been molded into a salesman today. Today he's a pretty good salesman. He's still got some work to do, but he's really learning and growing. And if you have a lot of experience but you don't have a ton of liquidity, it's possible to find people out there who do, and want to get into it. If you can show them that you know what you're talking about. So that's kind of how we work. We also have a transaction coordinator who is so organized. That's not my most prominent skill. Um, so she handles everything from contract signed to close. And then we have VAs that handle our outbound marketing, and we have a media buying company that handles our TV commercials that we run.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Let's get into that. We have the sales process and marketing. You had mentioned that before we got on this episode, how important the marketing is.
Definitely.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so right now we're doing TV commercials and we're doing outbound cold text message marketing. Those both have been successful marketing avenues. Uh, I've seen work in both of my ventures. So the one company was doing the texting, the one was doing the TV ads. I took what worked and trashed what didn't, and we landed on that. So it's been working very well for us.
So when you get those leads from that marketing energy and turns into that sales process, you mentioned that your partner's he's getting better at that, and it starts with building the rapport. Otherwise, if you don't have a rapport, you get hung up on.
That's correct.
What does that sales process look like?
Right. So the most important thing when you start off a call is to make sure that this person on the other end of the line is interested in the service you provide. So we want to make sure that they are actually looking to sell their house in the near future, and you want to make you want to clearly outline the expectations of the call. I just need 10 minutes of your time. We're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about this. And you want to ask for permission. So is it okay if we talk about this? They say yes, and then you can get into a little bit of a rapport phase. You can say, so how have you been this morning? Blah, blah, blah. What'd you eat for breakfast? I love talking about food with people because I haven't met anyone yet that doesn't like to talk about food. And, you can say, oh, bacon, egg, and cheese. My wife's a sausage girl, but blah, 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 blah. And, you can just talk for 10 minutes. And after that, they kind of have a warm, fuzzy feeling. And then you say, well, my name's Garrett. I'm with True South House Buyers. Here's what we've done for so many people just like you. And I want to ask you a few more questions just to kind of see if we would be a good fit to do some business together. Is that okay? And then, you go through your property information. You don't need too much information about their property. Just general stuff, the age of things, the overall condition of things. And you really want to hit on the head their motivation, and you want to really relate to their motivation. And I'll say this: if there's no motivation, 90% of the time you don't have a deal. There's always that 10% of the time. So if there's no motivation, I just cut to the price. I say, okay, well, oh yeah, I just want to sell my house to make some money. Oh yeah, like I'd sell it maybe. Okay, what do you want for it? But if there is, you dive deeper. You find out really what they're feeling in that moment, and then you provide a solution. And if you can provide a solution that works for them, and you've developed that rapport, and they have connected with you, a lot of the time, you'll earn their business.
No, I love that motivation. In other words, those pain points.
Yeah.
So you get most of the people. Tell me if I'm wrong. Most of the people they're contacting you through the marketing that you do, and some of them are just calling to see if they can get $200,000 for their $200,000 house.
Yes.
And at that point, you're getting right to it because you're not seeing the motivation or the pain points. They just want to see if you're going to buy a $200,000 house for $200,000. So there's no reason to spend a lot of time on that call unless you sense those pain points and some motivation to make it worth your while.
Correct. It's unbelievable how quickly I can sniff out a non-lead from a call. And, my business partner, he's getting there, but there's only a certain amount of things people on the other end of that phone usually say. And if it starts going down one of those non-lead avenues, I can sniff it out pretty quickly. But yeah, you really only want to spend time on those leads that you truly have those characteristics of a motivated seller.
Yeah, and all I can think of now is because you want to spend good time on valuable leads because that's the name of your game. Definitely. And you don't want to spend a lot of time on those other leads that aren't necessarily gonna be fruitful for you. So does your marketing provide you enough leads where you really need to be frugal with your time and those calls because you don't have enough time in the day to call all those leads, or what does that look like?
Yeah, definitely. I think right now we're averaging about 1,000 outbound SMS messages a day to people who fall on different targeted data lists. We buy lists of people who are, based on age, income, motivating factors, vacant properties, absentee properties, so on and so forth. And we target those people pretty heavily. So, I can't go through and call each of those people unless someone raises their hand and is saying, yeah, I'm interested. I'm not really going to hop on the phone with them. And, what we're moving towards is having a pre-screening person, who's going to go in and do that level of, hey, are you looking to sell your house in the near future? Are you looking to, why are you selling it? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, you pass the test, pass off to the closers, which is, me and my business partner, to free up some more of that time. But I will say different marketing avenues provide different qualities of leads. The average quality of a text messaging lead is a lot lower, even though you're going to get a lot more of them. Whereas the average quality of a television lead is they're much rarer, but they're, where, texting is 1 in 20 will turn into a deal. TV is usually 1 in 5.
And you're paying a lot more for the TV, and that's all relative. So it's, you've got your portfolio of marketing and sales, and one's better than the others, but one's more expensive than the others, but both valuable in their own right.
Definitely. Within the first 4 months of being in business, we, both marketing avenues paid for themselves.
Of course.
So
otherwise, why would you do it?
Correct. And that's our major focus for 2023. We want to grow our marketing and reinvest. We see that there are other companies who we know are not being run as well, that, maybe have different marketing channels that we could penetrate and take advantage of that, we just haven't gotten to yet. So we're really looking to ramp up and expand our marketing in this coming year.
Nice. Other sources of finding properties. I started off early on where I became a broker just because I wanted access to the multiple listing service. That was a great source in the Albany, New York area at the time. and I was just plucking distressed properties from that multiple listing service periodically. Got into auction properties, going to the county courthouse for foreclosure sales. Do you do any of that?
So, I found that auctions a lot of the time and the multiple list has been kind of flooded by, I wouldn't say rookies, but maybe people who are willing to pay a little bit more because of their lack of experience, or, international money. This is at least my experience. Properties that are available to the public are typically being um, overpaid for due to their scarcity. Um, I found that establishing really good relationships with local attorneys, probate attorneys, um, you know, real estate agents as well, those are not as valuable connections a lot of the times because they have vast lists of buyers. But, occasionally a realtor will say, "Oh, I have this property that, I thought of you, blah, blah, blah." Um, I got my first ever deal off of Craigslist. Um, so Craigslist is a pretty good place to look. And, I also have had success with door knocking. So, if you're not afraid to invest your time, um, and go drive a neighborhood you're interested in and, find some houses that look like they're a little bit rough around the edges, maybe you knock 200 houses and you'll buy one of them. So it's all a numbers game with anything, but, I would say establish connections with people in adjacent industries, and a couple times a year, you'll get a couple deals off of them.
Yeah, networking, and you mentioned probate, which equals estate sales. Has that been a good source?
Definitely. The flip we're working on right now was just, a probate attorney representing a client that I think she lived in Alaska, and she had a relative in Tennessee. She's not coming down to deal with it, so she hired this attorney that I know, and she connected me, and I got a really good price for it. But the probate leads, they are often some of the best, but it's very competitive. A lot of those listings are in the paper, so like I said previously, you have to follow up diligently and message them frequently, because maybe they won't reply to you on the fourth text message you send them, but on the sixth or the fifth they will.
Yeah, and probate. Talk about people buying emotion, and when you're looking at a probate deal, ultimately someone passed away,
Yeah,
and now the family is settling the estate, and they're the ones who are now in charge of who they're going to sell this property to, and they're right in the middle of an emotional time. Talk about them wanting to sell to the person that they like the most at that
oh yeah,
time of their life. That is huge.
totally. You have to relate to their situation and be an ally to their situation to earn their business. I just lost a deal to a competitor. Son who had been living in the house, had passed away from an overdose, and I of course, I felt terrible for them and expressed that, and I asked them, what that was like for you, and if there's how you've been feeling about it, and how it's affected you. You want to dig deep into those emotions. But my competitor, they had actually had that same experience with their sister. They had a sister that had overdosed. So, you know, a lot of the times price is a secondary, connection is a primary. So, if you can relate to people, you'll win deals.
Yeah, and that's a huge nugget for this episode. I'm glad that we touched on that because a lot of times that most important thing that you're going after is not even the topic of conversation. because you have to build that relationship with that person to get to where you need to be. The other thing that I'd like to point out with these estate sales, even in a very, very competitive market, it could be, a super hot market. But bottom line is when these family members take over these properties, for example, 2 years ago, I bought a 16-unit building. And by the time that I was introduced to this property, it had been a year and a half since the property owner had passed. And in that time, the family wasn't motivated to rent the apartments that were coming vacant. They weren't taking care of some of the stuff that had to be done over the last year and a half. So even though it may be competitive, whoever's able to make that deal on that property that's half vacant, needing some work. So somebody is going to get a fair deal on that property where we come in and we do some work. We call this that value add rent growth play. We come in, do that work, fill the apartments, get the apartments up to market rent, and we force massive value very, very quickly.
Definitely.
Before we get to these outros, have you put any of these properties in a portfolio where you're where you're collecting real estate, I guess I should say?
That is what we're trying to get into this year. We get a lot of deals sent to us from wholesalers that wouldn't really make sense for us as flips, but would make sense for us as a cash flowing rental. Until recently, we haven't had the capacity to, do our flips and do rentals, both fiscally and as far as contractors go. But we're really in a place now where we can start doing that. So, by the end of this year, we're hoping to have, doing at least one rental a month, adding to our, creating a portfolio, because that's the reason I got into real estate in the beginning. Was I was so upset with how much money I was paying my college landlord that I had to get into the business.
And you're able to build that portfolio and get those huge tax benefits with depreciation. Exactly. Bigger properties getting into the cost segregation where, you're making good money on flipping houses, but Uncle Sam has his hand out every year.
Oh, Uncle Sam. He never gets
Uncle Sam.
Yeah, that's
and I'll leave it at that before, the other thought that comes to mind with Uncle Sam these days, I'll bite my tongue. But let me finish up here. This is the Collecting Real Estate podcast. They say you have to have 3 of something to make a collection. First question for you is, in 5 words or less, what's the most important thing you've learned since you started collecting real estate?
Don't overpay for ugly houses.
There you go. I love it. Number 2, what are your 1 to 2 year personal goals?
I would love to hit 2 million in revenue, 2 years from now. I think, we're on pace to hit 1 million in revenue this year. I mean, all we can do is do what we're doing already and work even harder to get there. I would love to have, at least 15 doors and maybe an Airbnb sprinkled in there.
There you go. Whenever we're on this podcast asking that question, everybody is so focused in on their numbers and what they got to do to get there. What do you do for fun?
Oh, what do I do for fun? I live in the Big Apple. I live in New York City. So the club scene is great. The restaurants here are great. I love living here. It's a lot of fun, but, traveling around with my friends, traveling with my girlfriend, seeing the world, that's really what I want to do more. And hopefully if I can get some more passive income going, I can do a lot more of that. But, just, friends and family are the most important. So, that's the most fun for me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. Last question for you is, how can we and the listeners assist you, and how do we contact you?
You can find me on Facebook, Garrett Waller. I am actively looking for investors in my deals. if you want to shoot me a message, if you're interested, I can definitely show you what we have coming up and give you a premium rate. I'm sure I'll outpace the stock market by a good amount on your return. And yeah, just stay in touch with me, reach out to me, and network with me, because at the end of the day, the best way that connections are formed is by helping one another. So if there's anything I can do to help you grow your business, I'm sure that one day down the line, it'll help me.
Awesome. Garrett, thank you so much for being on the Collecting Real Estate podcast. I learned a lot from the wholesaling and flipping business. That marketing and sales process was very, very valuable. Thank you so much for being on the Collecting Real Estate podcast.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.